Hello, lovely internet people. Rotoworld's Josh Norris here with the handsome, very handsome John Daigle and Patrick Doherty. Guys, how are you?
Good. I don't get a very handsome.
You do? Well, both of you. That was like a general for the whole table.
No,
Daigle,
John,
you're good?
John deserves it.
Week one is here. It is finally upon us. I thought I wouldn't be ready, but I think I'm ready now.
We still have about 45, 50 minutes on the show to help you set your optimal lineup. We're here in Studio 2 here at NBC Sports HQ. This is Rotoworld Live. Thank you so much for being here. Like we said, the foundation of this show is really to help you set your optimal lineup for week one. We all want to win. Week one, we're going to hit on a core 4 games throughout the show, but also be sure to leave your viewer questions in the comment section, either on YouTube or on Twitch. And if you enjoy the show, be sure to share it as well. Let's start off, though, as we will each and every week, with the blurbs of the week. Guys, just a little bit of news in the last 24 hours, 72 hours, and it's all Antonio Brown related. So let's do this from both sides, okay? The first is that the Oakland Raiders released Antonio Brown. Pat, now what does this do for Derek Carr, Tyrell Williams, John Gruden not having his best player in the football field?
I would say it's bad, Josh, especially 48 hours before you're going to face one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL against the pass, and Vic Fangio. Raiders are in big-time trouble. They designed the entire offense around Antonio Brown. I mean, understandably so, but Tyrell Williams now completely miscast as a number one receiver, completely miscast with Derek Carr. We know their skill sets do not match. Tyrell does his best work down the field. Derek Carr does not do that.
Right.
And it's going to be, especially in week one, this is not an offense designed to adjust on the fly like this, and I think they're going to lose at home to the Broncos.
Yeah, Daigle, I have seen since then in the fantasy football bubble that Tyrell Williams is now considered a top 36, top 24 wide receiver. Where do you land in that spectrum?
I have been angry in the fantasy bubble seeing his name. It's an opportunity-driven fringe wide receiver 3 at this point, because the Raiders had a league-high amount of targets available coming into the season from last year's production. So now Antonio Brown, where does it go?
Right.
For the first couple weeks, they could legitimately throw to Ryan Grant in the slot a lot.
I know. We're live on air, so please don't say that.
That's what it is, though, right now. So, like, Darren Waller gets an upgrade because of this.
Yeah.
Ryan Grant, slight bump, but you don't want him in season long. Renfro's probably the one you want to target, unfortunately. But Josh Jacobs also, you have to downgrade now because he's just going to be running into the line early downs. It is legitimately a worse team who is now preparing, as he said, a playbook without the guy they put the playbook on against Vic Fangio's defense. It's a terrible
We're looking
thing.
at an over-under of 24 for weekly combined targets for Ryan Grant, Hunter Renfrow, and Jalen Richard.
Sounds beautiful.
That
exactly
is
what we want to hear heading into the 2019 season.
I'm going to go to sleep.
Let's then look at the other side of this equation. You can check out all these blurbs up on Rotoworld right now. And that is yesterday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, the New England Patriots signing Antonio Brown to $9 million guaranteed. I believe the contract goes up to $15 million. I mean, what an offseason for the Patriots in terms of Sony Michel's back healthy. You have Josh Gordon back on the field. We know Julian Edelman is a mainstay. No Rob Gronkowski. I mean, Pat, where in the equation does Antonio Brown fit in that lineup now?
Say no Rob Gronkowski for now. We know around Thanksgiving Gronk will be coming back. So I saw someone tweet, Michael Salfino of the Yahoo Sports, The Athletic, tweet he was expecting Antonio Brown in New England to be more Chad Ochocinco than Randy Moss, which you can kind of see from like where they arrived there via the off-field perspective, but I think Antonio Brown is going to be the alpha still. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest players in league history. I mean, the guy who's basically operating is no one is Jerry Rice, but has been the closest thing we've seen to Jerry Rice in the NFL, especially this century. And will he mesh with Tom Brady, who likes a tight, controlled offense? Antonio kind of likes to freelance. I think Tom Brady's a good enough quarterback, smart enough quarterback, and Antonio Brown's a smart enough. They're going to get on the same page one way or another. And Antonio was like a fringe wide receiver one in Oakland. It'll be the same thing.
What's funny is that the only team prepped to stop a three-wide set of Edelman, Josh Gordon, and Antonio Brown is the Patriots. They're the only team that can legitimately stop it. So it's really just a good sell high point. Once Josh Gordon goes off against the Steelers Sunday night, you turn around and flip him in your league on Monday because although he's great, his value will go down to wide receiver 3, I would imagine. Wide receiver 2 borderline with Antonio Brown joining the team.
And that Sunday night matchup is one of our core 4 games. We will get to that a little bit later on. Quickly, I do want to ask this question, though. Is this just a bump up for everyone? Because Antonio Brown was a third-round pick in a lot of fantasy drafts. Now you have him on one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL. What does this do for Sony Michel? What does this do for people who have Julian Edelman on their roster? Because he might not see as many targets. Obviously, in week 1, he still will. But in week 2, week 3, week 4, so on and so forth.
If you somehow got the mid-round red flag, like Antonio Brown in the 5th or so, then you stole. You got value on that.
I'm more concerned about Edelman, though.
Edelman, I would imagine, is still safe in the middle of the field, shallow. Now, he was a dark horse candidate legitimately to lead in targets at one point because he was surrounded by Demaryius Thomas and Philip Dorsett. That's clearly no longer the case. So that certainly does bump him down, but he still has a high floor.
He was on the wide receiver 1 borderline before. I think now more in his traditional territory,
wide receiver 2.
Wide receiver 18 to 20.
All right, let's answer some viewer questions. Again, all of you are leaving them in the comments, and we'll get to a ton of them throughout this 45 minutes. We'll start with Rob from YouTube. Damian Williams or Miles Sanders? LaShawn McCoy has me nervous. I believe one of the blurbs, which you, again, should go check out on Rotoworld, said that LaShawn McCoy will most likely see between 15 and 20 snaps. So, again, Damian Williams is someone that we hyped all offseason. Well, some of us did at this table. But we don't know exactly what the workload is going to be in week 1.
I think it's fair to say probably a fair amount of those 15 to 20 snaps will be touches, but Damian Williams is still the heavy touch favorite, whereas Miles Sanders is not the heavy touch favorite in his backfield. So Damian Williams on the RB2 borderline now, but I still prefer Damian Williams to Miles Sanders.
He is not the favorite. I think it's extremely close, though. So much so that I almost do lean Miles Sanders in what should be. I know they have said they're going to use a committee. I'm still extremely skeptical. I think when it comes down to it, and the Eagles have that 10-point lead in the second half because the matchup is so overwhelming in week 1, that Miles Sanders still gets those second half carries to end the game.
I mean, it's not like Kansas City is going up against a bad defense. They're going to be against a great defense on the road. But meanwhile, Philadelphia are 9.5-point favorites against the Washington Redskins. It's a good conundrum to be.
It is extremely close. Honestly, it really is.
Let's go to Matthias. Should I start Jameis Winston or Matt Ryan? Pat, in your rankings, you have Matt Ryan very, very low, like quarterback 18, quarterback 19.
Some might say too low.
But it's because in his past few games against a Mike Zimmer-led Minnesota Vikings defense, he's absolutely struggled.
Yeah, we know Matt Ryan has great dome splits, and he's going to be in a dome today, but the Vikings allowed the fewest passing touchdowns in the league last year. Matt Ryan, like you said, has struggled in his past matchups against the Vikings, and it's just the definition of a tough spot. He's going to be a top 8 quarterback by the end of the season, but this is going to be one of his toughest matchups all year.
It's Jameis Winston, and it's not close. This is arguably like a top 5 spot for Jameis Winston. Wow. That game is going to be insanity. They are so close, and neither team can stop the other. It's going to be fireworks.
Tampa's only favored by 1 at home, 50-point total between them and the 49ers. But again, you have Atlanta and Minnesota, and Atlanta's on the road, which you don't really want to play quarterbacks in that situation. And the total is
especially when both of those offenses are going to be figuring out the run. Like both of them have said they wanted to do that.
Let's go with Mr. Anderson. That's from The Matrix, correct? Mr. Anderson?
perhaps.
I haven't
It
seen The
is.
Matrix since I was like 15.
Guys, fantasy football and nerds, like the Venn
The
diagram
first
of
one still
Matrix
holds
lovers.
up. The second and third, though.
There's this. It's a one circle.
We all have very
Venn
nerdy
diagram.
interests. We all have our own unique nerdy interests, and one of mine was not The Matrix.
Come back when you talk about wrestling.
All right, Mr. Anderson asks Tyler Boyd or Matt Breida. We know that Tyler Boyd has the potential to be fed early on without AJ Green on the field, but it's not like it's an easy matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals here in Week 1.
It's a terrible matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals,
Yeah.
but it is a good matchup. For Tyler Boyd, this is like the definition of, when you think of the archetype, well, someone has to get these targets. I mean, Tyler Boyd, this is like a dictionary definition of that today. And the Seahawks, it's improved front seven, not an overly imposing secondary right now. And this, Andy Dalton has to throw somebody, and we know it's going to be Tyler Boyd. And maybe you'll be sweating it going into the fourth quarter, but if he doesn't have it by garbage time, he'll get it in garbage time.
I
It'll be
lean Tyler Boyd, 1 for the floor, and 2 because I don't want to be held accountable if Matt Breida doesn't outscore Boyd, because he genuinely could. Because that matchup, you want all the pieces in that game.
Yeah. I mean, I would more than lean to Tyler Boyd.
Me too.
Because
Slam dunk, John.
it's like the primary option in an offense that, I mean, if you want to use garbage time, sure, but even from the start,
It'll happen.
versus, I think Matt Breida is awesome. I think
Yes.
Matt Breida is awesome. But what we consider now and the information we have going into Week 1, he's a secondary piece.
Agree,
behind
but
Tevin Coleman.
remember, Tyler Boyd was worse without A.J. Green last year because of the concerted defensive
was.
effort shifted his way.
That was also a tiny sample
great.
size.
John,
He's
just
also
admit you're
developed
wrong.
since then. It's not. I think it's closer than you think.
This
I
is
really
good.
do.
We'll keep track of this as we move on. Let's move now into one
I
of
love
our
Breida.
core 4 matchups, which is the Rams at the Panthers in the 1 o'clock window. It's the total of 50.5. Panthers are actually 3-point home dogs against the favored Rams. Let's start with this question. Pat, what is your expectation for Todd Gurley in Week 1 after his uncertain playoffs, after his uncertain offseason? We've heard a lot of blurbs, we've read a lot of news that we're not exactly sure what his workload is going to be for Week 1 here against a pretty good Panthers defense.
Yeah, maybe the word arthritis has been thrown around. What I keep coming back to with Todd Gurley from a season-long perspective is that he was healthy enough to be active for the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game, but not healthy enough to be featured, which to me tells me this is an injury the Rams think is not going to get better. But, and all the offseason red flag, I mean, they mounted all offseason, but now they say he's not on snap count today. And if Todd Gurley's ever going to feast, it's probably going to be early in the season. Maybe today, too, they try to give him a pretty sizable workload, just get his confidence up, get maybe the whole offense's confidence up. So I think today's, you can expect a pretty big workload, probably over under at least 15 touches. But from the season-long perspective, I'm still very concerned. But today, right there on that RB1-2 borderline.
They said he's not on a snap count, but that doesn't tell us anything.
No.
Especially if all offseason you believed all 3 backs, including Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson, were going to be involved. And I think all 3 are involved. I would legitimately cap Gurley's touches today at 15.
Really?
Yes.
Maybe this is me as a pessimistic once Panther supporter.
We're fighting on this, I know.
Since I was 7 years old, I think that this could just be
You're
a
afraid he's
complete
going off.
destruction of the Panthers.
Wow. Okay. So let me just say this. I collect information and I adjust as the week goes along. And one of the biggest adjustments I've made throughout the week, this is shaping up to be just a Panthers smash. Like the Rams overmatched in this game. We
Right.
talked about their interior
Overmatched?
line. Oh, Rams overmatched in this
So
game.
you think the Panthers could smash?
Yes. No,
Okay, I'm the
Panthers-
opposite.
Yeah, no, I know what you are. I'm the opposite of you.
Okay.
But now this is Inception, so let's continue.
One final thought before we get to this next question with Gurley. His touches might be capped, but he's going to get the meaningful touches. Do you think they're going to put Malcolm Brown or Darrell Henderson inside the 5-yard line? I don't think so at all.
Henderson's pass catching touches will be valuable. He is a borderline flex play today.
we just
I'm telling you.
don't know yet, though. Is the
Yeah.
problem.
You are correct.
Daigle seems like he does.
It's just, yes.
Let's
it's
go to the other
Daigleism.
side with those dreaded Carolina Panthers. Will we see, Daigle, the early 2018 Cam Newton to start the season? Because early last season, he was fantastic in his first year in Norv Turner's offense, hitting Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, well, not Curtis Samuel at the time, but Christian McCaffrey. Now, probably the best skill position players he has heading into Week 1. Are you optimistic?
I don't think he's injured at all. I think he's healthy, ready to go. I just think in this matchup in particular, he reaps the awards and from what Christian McCaffrey does in the passing game. Because I don't think it's really a matchup that calls for him throwing downfield a lot. I genuinely think it's just hand off to CMC, let him run up the middle, and that's how they dominate this game. That and defensively.
I remember looking back to last year's news during training camp, and he wasn't even throwing down the field then. And then obviously the Steelers injury happened with his shoulder, and then he never threw down the field. He is in this preseason, and my boy Curtis Samuel might even blast off here in Week 1 against Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters on the outside.
I mean, you could literally see Cam Newton wincing. Like, you could actually see, like, in an HD television, him wincing as he threw the ball late last season. The shoulder seems good, and for the first time ever, the Panthers are treating him like a real quarterback. They're giving him playmakers. They're not just giving him 6'8" Kelvin Benjamins to try to corral the ball.
Right.
His completion percentage improved by 6%. He still has efficiency room to grow in this Norv Turner offense into so many playmakers.
And if he is injured, Curtis Samuel's shallow A-dot targets are still safe.
Even if he is injured, look at the dump-off targets. He has DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey.
Fun matchup. Let's keep it going with these viewer questions. Again, sticking with YouTube. Danny Slepker asks Joe Mixon or Kerryon Johnson. Questions with both. I'll go with Joe Mixon, that he's in a bad offense. Kerryon Johnson, we saw him lose passing down work in the preseason.
And they signed they claimed J.D. McKissick off waivers, another pass catching back, because for some reason they clearly don't want to give one of the most talented backs in the league like actual more opportunity. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Having said that, I still lean Kerryon Johnson just because the workload in this matchup. This is the only time all season that I actually favor the Lions offense. The only time.
You know what I've thought about Kenny Galladay all offseason? He's in basically every single one of my DFS lineups and tournaments.
You should have some Marvin Jones.
They are facing.
You're fading yourself.
I am in Week 1 already. They're facing the Arizona Cardinals away, but our
talented defense.
No Peterson.
Maybe the worst defense we'll see all year from a Cardinals defense, which might be the worst defense in the league.
And that's why I win the Lions winning outright if you're betting as well, just because their defensive front seven, especially with the added additions from the offseason, overmatch the Cardinals' offensive line by miles and miles.
I carry on one spot ahead of Joe Mixon. It's the worst spot for Chris Carson and maybe the best spot all year for the Lions offense.
It comes down to how much Bernard is mixed in the passing game, especially after that weird 2-year extension.
I could have done without that Giovanni Bernard extension.
It kind of screwed things up, yeah.
Let's next go to Charles Johannes. Need one for the flex. Fun names here. John Brown, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, or Curtis Samuel. I think we can, even though I think John Brown will have a really fun season, I think we can knock him out of this conversation. Is it DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, or Curtis Samuel in your opinion?
To me, it's still DJ Moore. Like I said, I'm not too worried about Cam's shoulder, and I don't think he'll be throwing downfield often, but as you said, DJ Moore is still safe in this offense, so I lean DJ Moore.
It's DJ Moore for sure. Curtis Samuel sucked up all the hype oxygen in Panthers camp. It almost led to DJ Moore being a steal in fantasy drafts. He's still, to me, the Panthers' clear-cut #1 receiver and more proven than Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel did play his best football of his career down the stretch last year, but it's DJ Moore.
All right, let's keep it going. With Rizzo's Gaming Headquarters. That's a fun name. Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady? This is an easy one. Patrick Mahomes.
It's
could you draft him so early?
Don't overthink.
Patrick Mahomes' season low for yardage last year was 243.
I actually don't believe in the start your studs mantra, but it's obviously Patrick Mahomes.
All right, let's do one more before we hit another Core 4 game. This is from Metropolis, Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. Baker Mayfield, we know so much hype around the Cleveland Browns this season. They have a great matchup to start the season at home against the Tennessee Titans as 5.5-point favorites, or you're going to go with the uncertain Jimmy G?
It is Baker. I'm skeptical of the 5.5 points, honestly. I sort of lean the Titans, but it's still Baker over Jimmy G, unless it's DFS, and I think Garoppolo is a great play. Season long, it's Baker.
It's Baker. I mean, the Titans' outside corners, I think, are a liability, and that's leading people to think this might be like a go wild spot for the Browns. The Titans are kind of an underrated. They were like a top 3 scoring defense last year, which can be misleading, but they have a great defensive coach, and I think the Titans. I agree with John. I think it's going to be a closer game maybe than some people are expecting.
All right, next Core 4 game. This is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tons of questions here. We know how good the Kansas City Chiefs were last year offensively. But on paper, the Jaguars are one of the best defensively as well. All right, so the question is, since the Chiefs signed LaShawn McCoy just a couple weeks ago, many people drafted Damian Williams as a bell cow for the Chiefs. So what's that workload that we will see split in Week 1, Pat? What do you think?
I'd say you can put the over-under for 14 to 16 touches for Damian Williams is kind of his over-under territory. I think maybe 8 to 10 for LaShawn McCoy. It's a huge season long worry. It will be Damian Williams today. I could see maybe the Chiefs needing to get some passing action involved with their running backs too today. I can see Damian Williams getting 4 to 5 catches. And I faded Damian Williams all summer. I will continue to fade him. But for week 1, to me, he's still right there on that RB2 borderline. Clear play over McCoy.
Unlike the Zeke 20 to 25 reps report, like there's a legitimate reason that McCoy could be held back in week 1 since he just joined the team. I definitely think he's involved. I'd project him around 7 to 10 touches. So it just depends if you think this game is going to be high volume or not in favor of the Chiefs, which it very well could be. Jacksonville can absolutely match them offensively.
It could be a sneaky shootout. They can't match the Chiefs offensively.
The Jags are starting
it could be a shootout.
That's the next question, actually. Do the Jaguars have enough offensively to keep up with the Chiefs? I'm surprised that you think so.
I'm confident they do so. Yeah.
Do you love Nick Foles? I'm learning so much about you in this first show.
It is all about weekly matchups, and this matchup just spits perfectly for the Jaguars, genuinely. The only issue is from this morning. Okay, so we have Nick Foles. Now we have a better offensive line, minus the left tackle issues, which I was about to get to.
That's a big deal.
They're on their 3rd left tackle, okay? But everyone else is healthy along the line. They have Cinder Brandon Linder back. You're getting me angry. They have left guard Andrew Norwell back now. So we're good from the left guard on, Josh. And then you have G.D. Westbrook connecting in the middle of the field with Foles. And we know the Chiefs added Spagnuolo, but does he really make a difference immediately, like a defensive presence? No. This game is a shootout. And the Jaguars start 1-0.
The problem for the Jaguars is they don't have their target tree worked out yet. It's D.D. Westbrook at the top, and then we don't know who the number 2 most targeted option is going to be. Is it going to be DJ Shark? Is it going to be Chris Conley? Is it going to be Marquise Lee?
Yeah.
And Josh Oliver's inactive. So
and can Nick Foles even throw the football to them? Do we remember how awful Nick Foles was to start last season?
Yes.
He was atrocious. And the exact equation that we're saying that D.D. Westbrook can put up week 1 numbers was the same thing we said about Nelson Aguilar at the start of last season, I think against the Tampa Bay Bucks.
This sounds personal for you.
And it was awful. He got 12 targets for a total of 36 yards.
Yes.
And we're saying the same exact thing with D.D. Westbrook with a worse team.
To me, the Jags are unlucky this game wasn't week 8. If they maybe had their offense kind of more finely tuned and more figured out. Week 1, it's going to be very tough for them to hang.
Kendall Fuller is overmatched in the slot from Westbrook. It's the reason why teams targeted him in the playoffs as well.
Right.
And then even if it doesn't work out for Nick Foles, Leonard Fournette against Football Outsiders is 32nd, dead last ranked rushing defense from last year. This is a big day for Fournette as well. Wow. This offense is going to look much better than you think, at least 1 week.
I am shocked that the sharp people think that the Jaguars can really hang in on this one.
I don't, but
I think they win 1-0.
All right. Let's go to more viewer questions. Hopefully we can talk some sense into John Daigle as the season goes along. Let's go with Chris L. Which one do I sit out of these 3 wide receivers? It's half-point PPR to both of you. T.Y. Hilton without Andrew Luck, Josh Gordon, or the aforementioned D.D. Westbrook. You want to take this one first, Daigle?
I was looking at line movement, so you're going to go ahead and go to Pat.
Again, Josh Gordon, because there's smoke signals that he might be basically on a pitch count today. So the other 2, T.Y. Hilton, we know the problems there, but there's a big difference between Chuck Pagano and Frank Reich. The Colts, Jacoby Brissett will be a little more usable in fantasy. T.Y. Hilton's not going to be under 1,000 yards like he was in 2017.
I agree.
Yeah, JG just.
I think we look back on it, and T.Y. Hilton was a really, really good value in drafts after the Andrew Luck retirement.
I'm sort of curious that they made the graphic just because they know I was looking at my computer at the time. So it helps me out, though, a lot. And I think the option is, it's close between Westbrook and Gordon, but Gordon is a top 25 receiver, at least for this week.
Speaking of T.Y. Hilton, here's a question from Twitch, from Yitz. DJ Moore, T.Y. Hilton. Pat?
DJ Moore. I'm all about DJ Moore was quietly one of the better. I think he led the NFL in yak after the Panthers bye last year.
The whole season.
The whole season. Okay, there you go. And I think he averaged almost 5 catches per game. He's just DJ Moore. People are sleeping on him. They got so excited about Curtis Samuel, understandably so.
Understandably so.
Are sleeping on DJ Moore.
I wonder who that was from. This is a tremendously underrated spot for the Colts, especially given the Chargers' injuries.
Yeah.
But it is still DJ Moore because I'm concerned about T.Y. Hilton.
Again, we're answering your viewer questions. Continue to leave them in the comments either on YouTube or on Twitch. Keep it going with Twitch here from Blue Force 22. Carson Wentz or Matthew Stafford today in single point per reception. I guess they're asking which receiver or which quarterback will more likely catch a pass.
It's definitely
PPR.
Carson Wentz.
No, but the question, it should be Carson Wentz in the starting matchup, even though Matthew Stafford has his easiest matchup of the season.
It's a streaming week for Stafford, but that doesn't put him over a top 10 option. It's Carson Wentz.
Right. One more. points is he? Oh, no, that's the next one. Reams 1, 2, 3, 4. Derrick Henry or Mark Ingram in a PPR league. I have more confidence heading into the 2019 season for Mark Ingram than I do with Derrick Henry. But would it be shocking if Derrick Henry exits this week 1 matchup with 20, 25 touches this week, Pat? No, because that's how they won the games last year.
It wouldn't be shocking, but I guess in PPR the problem is very few of them will be receptions, especially in PPR. I think the gap's a little bigger. I think Mark Ingram's kind of an underrated pass-catching back, and we're hoping Justice Hill will have the change-up pass-catching role, but I think Mark Ingram will lead that backfield in catches today.
I think we were higher on Derrick Henry than most of the industry, you and I.
No.
Really?
No.
I was extremely high on him. Still am.
You are daydreaming.
I was lower on Mark Ingram than the industry as well.
Okay.
But in this spot, in this matchup, I like to have volume towards what I believe will be high-scoring matchups, especially if you're splitting hairs. And so in that case, I lean Mark Ingram in this matchup because I do think the Dolphins have a chance to hang.
Let's go to Matthias. Will Devontae Freeman be awesome today or nah? That's it. Or nah. I think this is a very difficult matchup for Devontae Freeman, obviously on the road against the Minnesota Vikings front seven, and especially on a team or defense that Matt Ryan has struggled to go up against.
It's quite difficult, but for the first time in his career, he doesn't have a viable 1B back.
Correct.
And the concern for Devontae Freeman is breaking down this season. That's not a concern in week 1. So Devontae Freeman will have a perfectly usable RB2 day.
And Brian Hill was scratched, so it's Ito Smith as the clear-cut number 2.
Ito.
So, yes, I think Freeman's actually just fine today. Over 20 touches, most likely.
Isaac Sanabria, Calvin Ridley, or Dante Pettis. I'm starting actually Dante Pettis in a league this week. I think that, again, a San Francisco 49ers matchup against the Tampa Bay defense that is not good with Trent Taylor out, with Jalen Hurd out. I would be surprised if Dante Pettis doesn't play 80% of the snaps offensively this week, despite what Kyle Shanahan has been trying to tell us all offseason.
This is why you bought the dip and you drafted him late. Once everyone started believing the reports, it doesn't matter. He's going to be on the field every rep against a terrible defense.
And we're starting him over, who was the other person I mentioned?
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley.
I don't. To me, it's almost a toss-up, just because with Dante Pettis, I think he's going to be out there almost. Just Dante Pettis had a weird enough summer where I'd like to see one game before I start him over someone like Calvin Ridley. I just want to see one game. I just want to see what happens.
But isn't it Calvin Ridley in one of the worst matchups of the season he's going to see probably?
Yes,
Maybe,
that's the issue.
So you're going with the unknown. I mean, at the end of last year, Dante Pettis was putting up like 13, 15 points per game.
If it comes down to matchups and usage, I'm just slightly more comfortable with Calvin Ridley's usage today. Even though it's a bad matchup, I just think he's slightly more bankable usage than Dante. I just want to see one game from Dante Pettis, who I own in almost every league. I just want to see one game.
All right, let's keep it going with one of our core 4 matchups. This is Sunday Night Football, which you can watch on NBC. The Pittsburgh Steelers against the New England Patriots. Daigle, do you think we see one target emerge in this game to fill in, I guess, for the Antonio Brown absence? Because we know there's over like 200 targets on the table. We know that Juju's back, Vance McDonald is back. But which one, maybe one of those other wide receivers you're most interested in this game?
It is quite obvious from everything that's come from this offseason that Dante Moncrief is the number 2 receiver there. My big question that we will have answered tonight is, do they make room with Juju as a primary slot receiver to put James Washington in 3 wide sets? Or do we get what I think will happen, and it's going to be Ryan Switzer in the slot, which is detrimental to your offense?
Pat, this is your time to talk about Vance McDonald.
So I love Vance McDonald. He's going to be a top 8 tight end, probably top 5 tight end this year. Dante Moncrief, he is the obvious number 2 receiver, but he's been the obvious many things in the past and never ever cashed it in. I believe he had one random 10 touchdown season, but didn't come with much volume. I'm most excited about Vance McDonald amongst the people stepping into the Antonio Brown target vacuum. And they were put out some weird late summer reports on maybe he won't even play that many more snaps. The total
Didn't believe him. Didn't believe him.
I mean, even last year, he only played about 55% of the snaps. So if we see that bump up to 75, 80%, that's massive.
He was like 20th in tight end snaps last year and like 11. Not snaps. He basically produced way more yards, so efficient on a per play basis.
They valued Jesse James blocking even though Vance McDonald was the better blocker, and they had 0 cents. So imagine giving Xavier Grimble 45% of your snaps.
Mike Tomlin, challenge accepted.
The Patriots are 5.5-point favorites at home. This one, 51-point total in this game. Let's go to the second question. It's been an interesting offseason for Sony Michel. Interesting offseason for Josh Gordon in that it's uncertainty throughout. Now they are both seemingly peaking at the right time. Daigle, what's your read on both players heading into week 1?
It's going to be interesting watching them on the field together. But for this one, I don't think Josh Gordon's held back at all. I think they're ready to unleash him. And he made an impact on around like 60+% of the snaps last season. So now we get him at full bore from week 1 without Antonio Brown. Like, I'm very excited to watch Josh Gordon play tonight, and I believe he's extremely successful.
Sonny Michel?
Sonny Michel, it's a great.
It's a smash
He's
spot.
Gonna, yeah, it's a smash spot. He's going to get the
so
touches
good in the
tonight.
preseason.
I'm leery of Josh Gordon this week. You don't get direct quotes from the Patriots on these things. You only get smoke signals. There's this weird vibes in Josh Gordon, I thought, over the final week or 2 of camp, where he might be just.
In what way?
I just think he might be on a bit of a snap count tonight. He was, late to action in camp, and I don't know. He has been in the past. They put him in very early last year. I don't know.
And just as important of how Sonny Michel looks, it'll be interesting to see if Damien Harris, isn't inactive heading into this game as well. Because then you know it's Sonny Michel and you know it's James White. And if that's the case, and if it's within the 5-yard line, we know the Patriots, maybe more than any other team, love to run the football inside the 5.
Do we think Antonio Brown's on the sideline tonight?
I don't think he's allowed to be.
Oh, he's not allowed to be. Okay.
He'll be sitting in the crowd though, like Romelu Lukaku at a Manchester United game. He's not on Man U anymore, but
No, he's not.
Yeah, but,
he's on Inter Milan.
That was an obscure reference.
There we go. All right, let's keep going with viewer questions. Again, continue to leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, by the way. Nick Groves, Tyler Lockett or Kenny Galladay in full point PPR? 1,000% Tyler Lockett despite Galladay's matchup.
Tyler Lockett in the slot against the Bengals. It's going to be a heavy dose of Seattle offense to get a big lead, and they just hand it to Chris Carson the rest of the way.
This is an easy one, but we haven't talked about him yet, and we should. Jason Guan asks, Ezekiel Elliott or Tevin Coleman, who's going to start for him?
Did you leave your phone on, Josh
Did I?
Norris? I think it just went off.
All right,
yeah.
well, maybe we'll go into an ISO shot or, a graphic up, and then I'll fix it.
Throw a
But
graphic
Pat,
up and then, yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott or Tevin Coleman?
Definitely Zeke. We keep hearing the 20 to 25 snaps, but like I said earlier with McCoy, I think a lot of those snaps will be touches. So if Zeke's in the game, he'll probably be touching the ball. And I don't know. Some people have Zeke back in the top 5. I think more in like the 10 to 12 range, but that's still comfortably ahead of Tevin Coleman.
It's definitely ahead of Tevin Coleman. I think Zeke is a fringe running back 2 this week.
Yeah.
And Tevin Coleman's a great flex play, but even so, it's Zeke ahead of Coleman.
That also shows you how few text messages I get, because that was the first
that
one
was
in about
shocking,
35
actually,
minutes.
Yes, it was very shocking.
I've probably received like 40.
No one hits me up. It's just the lonesome.
I have a lot of
life
Twitter
a writer.
notifications just for news, so it just would have been going insane right now.
Let's go to Ramon Ross. Damian Williams or Will Fuller, flex spot, full point PPR. We talked a lot about Damian Williams. I would expect him to see about 30 to 40 snaps in this game.
I thought you were saying touches for a second.
30 to 40 snaps in this game. Will Fuller, though, is someone who we haven't spoken about, someone who has scored 11 touchdowns in 16 games, I believe, with Deshaun Watson. And I think in a matchup that a lot of points are expected, obviously on Monday night against the New Orleans Saints, the 53.5 total.
That's truly a tough question.
Very.
I'd lean Damian Williams. I'm pretty sure I would go Damian Williams, but man, that's tough.
I'm taking the receiver facing Eli Apple in a game with a 53.5 over/under.
Best
going with
answer.
Will Fuller.
I don't even think full point PPR really matters for Will Fuller either,
No.
because it's just touchdown, not touchdown. That's his game.
A historic connection. With Deshaun
I'm
Watson.
excited to see what that offense looks like now with Duke Johnson as well.
And if
Another play we
QT
haven't
actually
seen.
plays, we have him and Duke Johnson
Yeah.
taking away from Fuller as well.
Let's go down to the Twitch questions. Hurricane 126, is Tom Brady a top 12 quarterback for the rest of the season? He was certainly not drafted as a top 12 quarterback.
No.
He wasn't drafted as a top 15 quarterback. Mike Clay, friend of the show, friend of the site, recently posted his projections and said that he expects Tom Brady to throw for 33 touchdowns this season, which he hasn't done since 2015.
No, not top 12
Okay.
the rest of the season. Just given the running offense that they usually attack with. In a year that everyone switched to 11 personnel and hired young offensive coordinators, the Patriots still trotted out 21 personnel and James Devlin nearly every play. It's just they just zag when everyone zigs.
We were forecasting a zag for the Patriots,
Yeah.
but now it's like that had already become too much of a meme for Bill Belichick. Now he's re-zigging. And, adding Antonio Brown. And I have to say, every
He
time.
can do both now. He can do both now.
Every time I
Yeah.
looked at Tom Brady's 2018 stats, I always expected them to be worse. Like when I was going to rank quarterbacks this summer, oh, Tom Brady, QB 20. And then I look at, wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it does speak to how good the quarterback position is this year. Pat, this one's just for you. This is from Amuse. Kyler Murray or Jameis Winston? We have not spoken about Kyler Murray at all. Odds-on favorite to be Rookie of the Year. They're 2.5-point dogs, again, against those Detroit Lions with a 47 total. We think that total is going to be a lot higher than that. But, Pat, Kyler Murray was in many places selected as a top 12 option at the position.
Odds-on favorite to revolutionize the NFL,
Right.
not just be Rookie of the Year. I have him ahead of Jameis. To me, it's weird. I have some twisted logic here, but I'm still giving Jameis Winston a probationary week. Just make Jameis just be an actual good player for one game.
One
under
week,
your new
prove
coach.
it.
Yeah, it was so I'm making the veteran prove it, but not the rookie. That's very solid
I was
logic.
alluding to.
Very, very, very solid logic.
It is such a bad matchup, almost so much so that Detroit will be the only offense to benefit from the hike in play volume in Clint Kingsbury's side. It's just the Cardinals are missing their best offensive lineman as well, and they're going up against one of the most underrated front sevens in the league.
Added Mike Daniels, added Trey Flowers, the Lions did. I just have no idea what that Cardinals offense is going to look like. Like, part of me, if we believe what Chase Edmonds said, then we'll come back next week and have a whole new perspective of what football is based on what this Cardinals offense is going to be in week 1.
So the one thing we do know, all we know is that it's a dual threat quarterback and one of the highest volume passing offenses maybe of the decade.
Yeah.
And that's what we know. And it's going to be special for fantasy.
Rich has a very, very good lineup because he's asking Brandon Cooks or Chris Godwin in full point PPR. We've seen Chris Godwin line up a lot in the preseason in the slot in that Larry Fitzgerald role. Yes, Chris Godwin.
I think it's Chris Godwin. It's easy.
Yeah.
I want to say Chris Godwin. I still think Brandon Cooks probably has the higher ceiling. Chris Godwin definitely has the higher floor.
I just hate the matchup for Cooks this week when I love the matchup for Godwin.
It's a toss-up for me. Yeah, it's tough.
We have not had a Austin Eckler question yet, so let's do that with Neil Cowboys. Silent K, maybe?
Sure.
Neil Cowboys? Should I flex T.Y. Hilton or Austin Eckler? This is a 10-team full-point PPR. I think Austin Eckler is going to see the majority of the carries, and even if he doesn't, he's a better football player than Justin Jackson. So I'm absolutely going with Austin Eckler in this situation against the Indianapolis Colts as 6.5-point home favorites against those Colts.
The concern we have is the offensive line injuries for the Chargers. We have Dan Feeney starting at left guard. The interior of this line has made 18 total starts. No, they are injured. That's the Ram stat I was about to shoot out. Okay. So either way, here, Austin Eckler benefits from the injuries because they have to dump it off shallow now. I recovered well, though.
You did.
Go ahead.
I mean, the industry-wide consensus seems to be about 70% of the snaps for Austin Eckler, which is, to me, more than enough to return RB2 value, and I'll take him over the receiver.
Yeah.
Right. I think I did in an earlier podcast, though, pick the Colts here to possibly upset the Chargers. So I'm talking myself into a
Well,
pretzel.
Josh, I had money on the Colts, so I hope you're right.
So Daigle's all aboard that.
Yeah.
We were talking about it at the bar last night.
I was waiting for the hook. I was waiting for the +7, but I don't think it's coming back. I think it's 6.5. So fingers crossed, Josh.
And still no Russell Okung at that left tackle spot either. I mean, and in Indianapolis Colts defense, that if it still plays at the level it did last year, I mean, again, not necessarily sticky, but they have a lot of young pieces that could be a lot of fun to watch.
The big change is Frank Reich from Jacoby Brissett's last stint as starter.
You
and that's going to
cannot
make
compare
the difference.
them.
Exactly. That's what's going to make the difference.
Going from the worst offensive line to possibly best in football, yada, yada, yada. All right, let's go to Gabriel Dozal. Love the job you guys do. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Again, another Austin Eckler question or O.J. Howard in my flex. Full point PPR. I love the idea, though, of having a second tight end in your flex spot, especially maybe the most talented, if not a top 3 talent at the position.
It's not tight end premium, does he say?
It's not.
Okay. I
still lean PPR.
I still lean Eckler. It's kind of funny because Eckler's gone throughout the week without getting talked about. When, as we said, I think it leans over 60-40 in favor of him over Justin Jackson, especially in passing downs, because even if it is 60-40, he's been so efficient with targets, so efficient.
And we like O.J. Howard, but Pat, we haven't seen like a huge expanded role for him yet in this offense, and we have seen that before with Austin Eckler.
Yeah, and Bruce Arians didn't even produce tight end 2s in Arizona, let alone tight end 1s, but that's because he never had a tight end like O.J. Howard. And this question's too hard, by the way. Don't ask questions that hard. We want them to be obvious, but I still lean Eckler.
I still think we get like a career-high slot rate for O.J. Howard this year, being used as a receiver.
Oh, he's a freak who's going to go nuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's going to happen.
But it's still Eckler in this matchup.
Let's go to our last Core 4 matchup of the weekend, last Core 4 game. It's the Monday night matchup. Houston Texans at the New Orleans Saints. What are your expectations, Pat, for Duke Johnson in his debut for the Texans?
We shouldn't mention this name, but I read Evan Silva's matchups column this week. He made an interesting point, something that I hadn't really seen here, is Deshaun Watson's never been much of a running back check down quarterback. So to me, that's an interesting dynamic, but I think Duke is finally going to have the lead on early downs. It's the premier fantasy game of the week. I feel very comfortable forecasting Duke Johnson as an RB2.
Daigle, over under 17.5 touches for Duke Johnson here in week 1.
Oh, I would go over 20.5. Really? Yeah, because I would imagine 15 carries. With Lamar Miller's injury, the Texans now have the most available carries missing from last season's production. Duke Johnson is miles ahead of Carlos Hyde. And so if you tack on 15 to 16 carries, plus the inevitable 6 targets he's going to get, whether they're shallow or whether they're deep, whatever the case, out of the backfield, like the sky is literally his projection, especially in this matchup indoors.
We learn a lot in week 1 across the league, but maybe the one I'm most fascinated about is Duke Johnson's role in a super high-powered Houston Texans offense and a possible defense that might be absolutely awful.
The key here is I know we are concerned about Drew Brees' decline that started.
Well, let's go to the next question because that basically is
I'm professional on TV.
Question. Thank you very much. Does starting Drew Brees now come with that lower ceiling you were referring to?
So even though his decline obviously started last year, 9.5 yards per attempt at home. Even last year. So if the Saints offense keeps up, that only propels Duke Johnson, Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins. Right. It only helps Deshaun Watson. So I would imagine, yes, especially at home, indoors, we get just monstrous numbers from everyone involved.
Drew Brees' decline started 2 years ago, and I'm very concerned about him for season long. But so this is going to be like one of those non-predictive week ones because the setup is basically could not be better. And Drew Brees, he's still efficient at throwing deep, but he throws deep less than ever. It's going to limit his big play abilities.
Yeah.
And maybe a slightly thinner supporting cast than he's been used to the past 2 years. So long story short, his decline has started. I think it's real, but week 1 is not going to tell the story.
Is it possible that the additions of Jared Cook, that Traquan Smith is going into year 2, a healthy Ted Ginn out there, unlocks Drew Brees' ceiling a little bit in terms of being a vertical passer? Because he goes from, Dan Arnold, but from Dan Arnold to obviously Jared Cook, who's one of the better receiving tight ends down the seam in the NFL.
I think he's just lost too much off his arm. I really do. He picks his spots brilliantly, so his advanced metrics are still. He still is a very efficient deep passer. He'll grade out well in advanced deep passing metrics, but he just does it less than ever. I think his loss of arm strength is real.
I think we kind of forget how good Drew Brees was to start the first half of last season. He was right there with Patrick Mahomes and even more so with efficiency as being an MVP candidate.
But this is what happens to old quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning was marching through the 2014 season, I believe, or 2013, until the Jeff Fisher's Rams sacked him 10 times and he was never the same. And that kind of happened to Drew Brees last year. I'm hoping it doesn't carry over to this year.
Look at these graphics we got this year, guys. A little
Quite
upgrade.
fancy.
We fancy. All right, rest of the show are your viewer questions. Rapid fire a little bit, guys, here.
Okay.
Maybe not both of us talk about or all 3 of us talk about it.
My contract says 5 minutes per question.
All right, Pat, let's go to Brian Maley, Darius Geis, who we've not spoken about, or Albert Wilson, who most likely will fill the slot work Daigle. Turning to you, half-point PPR here.
I believe it's Albert Wilson, actually. Wow. Now, we are going to know within the first 2 possessions if the Dolphins are actually going to keep up in this game because the Ravens are most likely going to march down the field the very first drive and score. But if they do, and we've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick do crazier things, then Albert Wilson is the #1 receiver and the guy that's bound to go over that 100-yard touchdown mark.
What do you think of Darius Geis this week?
So even with the horrible game flow, what we're expecting to see, I think we'll see enough touches to return low-end flex value. I love Albert Wilson this year, but I'm going Geis.
It also would not be shocking if Chris Thompson has more touches this week.
Chris
than
Thompson
Darius
will
Geis.
absolutely outsnap Darius Geis.
I could see the Redskins kind of just experimenting with this. Is like already a lost
like
week
just
for
putting
them.
a loss on them?
No, I just to see them really kind of trying to get Darius Geis going.
Donald Penn, Eric Flowers, Darius Geis, please try and
Darius
do something.
Geis was a focus.
He's going
for
to run
them.
into their ass and fall down every time.
I can just view and
I didn't mean to
see Jay Gruden in his post-game press conference being like, "Oh, we were just experimenting out there."
You know what I mean? I think they're going to try to get Darius Geis going for the whole. Albert Wilson didn't even practice this summer.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a concern.
All right, for real rapid fire now. Christopher Tremaine, he's stacked at running back, will likely never start Latavius Murray. Should he trade him for Melvin Gordon, who probably in the last half of the season, maybe week 8, week 9, week 10, returns?
Let's flip this. How many weeks do you think we get out of Melvin Gordon?
I think he shows up in week 9. So that means in the regular fantasy season, we might get 4 or 5 games out of him.
And so they play him before their week 12 bye.
Yes.
Okay.
For 1 or 2 weeks. I think you keep Latavius in this situation.
You absolutely keep
because
Latavius.
I believe Latavius is going to have that Mark Ingram role in the Saints offense.
He is, but he's worse than Mark Ingram. I hate stashing suspended and injured
he is.
players, but if you can turn Latavius Murray into Melvin Gordon, I would do that.
All right. Another one from Jack Jackman, full point PPR. Robbie Anderson, who was dealing with an injury all week, or Michael Gallup. Fun one.
Injured and a tough matchup in Tre'Davious White, but I'll still go Robbie Anderson. I think he's finally being used in a more fantasy profitable way.
It's a hold your nose and start Robbie Anderson.
Yeah.
I could see Michael Gallup going like 2 long
Michael Gallup's
touchdowns
more
in
fun.
week 1 and Kellen Moore, but we've also seen the narrative that Robbie Anderson will be used in those shorter A-dot routes.
Gallup's
as
sexier
well.
to start for sure.
Jason Best, Kenyon Drake, or Curtis Samuel, half-point PPR. I don't think we've talked, other than Albert Wilson, about a Miami Dolphin at all, and that's because they are 6.5-point home dogs with just a lowly total of 37.5. To me, it's Curtis Samuel here.
It's correct.
Curtis Samuel. I'm just going to answer for both of us.
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel.
Yep. Okay. Stephen Pringle, Cooper Kupp, Dede Westbrook, Stephon Diggs, pick 2, non-PPR. So Stephon Diggs obviously dealing with a hamstring injury, but is a go in this game, Pat.
I hate saying bench Cooper Kupp, but there I give Dede the slightest of edges over Cooper Kupp, and I still have Steph as a top 20, despite his poor history of playing through questionable tags.
Daigle, this one's to you. Andy Howan, Matt Breida, or Philip Lindsay, full-point PPR?
Matt Breida. Very close. And it's a terrific spot for Philip Lindsay. But like I said,
It's a very good spot.
But like I said, whenever it's nitpicking, I want what I believe will be the higher volume of plays.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know if Oakland can keep up, and if. But again, we don't know exactly
Lindsay's
how the
splitting.
backfield is going to be split with Denver now. Either.
I would say Lindsay's splitting with Royce Freeman.
Matt Breida is splitting with Tevin Coleman.
That's fine.
In all caps, Corey McClucas asked Josh Gordon or Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, there's some positive trends in his
kinda
direction
sneaky.
because
Sneaky.
every game he played with just Kenny Galladay last year, he tied him in targets, and we've talked about how bad this Arizona Cardinals defense is.
It's still Josh Gordon for me.
Yeah.
But it's very much the Michael Gallup question again. It's like, it's kind of sexier to start Marvin Jones. It's a lot of fun. And you should just have fun today.
Okay, Tony Pollard or Miles Sanders from Chris Thompson? Not the football player Chris Thompson, because you're probably on the
You
field
never
right
know.
now. Miles Sanders in that case. Jason Al, Darius Geis, or Marlon Mack, since Adrian Pearson is inactive. We haven't spoken about Marlon Mack at all, but if it's good game script for the Colts, then he's going to be on the field maybe 20.
Which we're hoping it is, Josh. We're hoping it's good game script.
He was game script dependent last year, but the hype is more pass catching this year, which to me is still, I can't remember who the alternative was, but it was definitely Marlon Mack.
End of the year, including the postseason, Marlon Mack actually started running more routes than Naheem Hines. And I think that trickles over to every down back workload this year.
All right, let's close it out, and thanks so much for tuning in. With this one from Tower, thoughts on James White tonight in a full-point PPR league?
Thoughts?
Yeah, enjoy trying to predict the Patriots backfield in week 1 and how they've had 3 months to prepare for
But
this
hey,
week
no
1
pressure.
matchup.
You only just got asked. Thoughts? They're flowing. They're in my head. Man, it's so hard.
I don't know if you. I think if you have a back that you can predict 12 to 15 touches on, you have them over James White.
So I thought a lot about a lot of players this week. James White was
not
not really
one
one
of
of
them.
them. And to
I
me,
think that
James
sums
White,
it up.
James White's the classic. I look for reasons to bench him, not
Right.
start him.
Right. All right, guys, that's it. Roto Pat, thanks so much. John Daigle, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All of you out there, thank you so much for watching again our first week of Rotoworld Live. If you have any more start-sit questions, go and check out the site's rankings, Pat's rankings up on rotoworld.com. And be sure to go and subscribe to the Rotoworld Football Podcast. We have a full whip-around podcast available for your commute on Monday morning. So for Pat, for Daigle, for Josh, talk to you next week. Same time, same place. See ya.